Alex Acosta's 6-hour testimony, revisiting the Epstein plea deal, accountability, and what's at stake. When Alex Acosta sat for a closed-door 6-hour hearing before the House Oversight Committee on September 19th, it felt like a turning point. Acosta, once a U.S. attorney, later Trump's labor secretary, had long been under fire for negotiating the infamous 2008 plea deal that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to dodge more serious federal charges. The hearing laid bare both the mistakes of the past and the unfinished questions that keep echoing today. What's at issue? The 2008 plea deal. To understand why this moment matters, here's a quick refresher. In 2008, Epstein made a deal with Acosta's office, then U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, that resolved state charges of soliciting prostitution and avoided federal sex trafficking charges. Under the terms of the deal, Epstein served about 13 months in county jail, but was allowed daily work release privileges that let him leave for up to 12 hours a day. Critically, the deal included immunity from federal prosecution for Epstein and any potential co-conspirators for conduct known or possibly known at the time. Back when it was struck, Acosta defended it as the best guaranteed path: jail time, registration as a sex offender, restitution, and a public message that wrongdoing would not go unpunished. But over the years, critics, victims, lawyers, watchdogs have argued that the terms were far too lenient given what was then known about Epstein's conduct. What Acosta said in the hearing. Acosta's testimony makes clear that he still stands by many of his original decisions, but also admits missteps. What he said, and didn't fully say, matters because it shapes whether the public and Congress can believe this was a case of poor judgment, negligence, or something worse. Here are the key points: evidentiary issues and concern about losing at trial. Acosta repeatedly described the case against Epstein in 2006 to 2007 as weak in certain respects. He said that if prosecutors had taken the case to federal court, then they might have lost, which in his view would have made things worse. No conviction, no sex offender registration, no assurances to victims, regret over how victims were treated, and limited transparency. Acosta said he regretted that his office wasn't more forthright with victims. He praised their courage, but also admitted he did not review all the victim statements himself. That gap stood out in the committee's questions: defense over work release and local decisions. He claimed that he was assured Epstein wouldn't get work release, but that local authorities overrode or approved those privileges. In other words, he placed part of the responsibility on others: distance from high-profile names and memory lapses. On questions about Donald Trump's name appearing in any Epstein-related documents, Acosta said he did not see Trump's name on files he handled. On many other points, especially about who knew what, when, and how, he often answered, "I don't recall," admitting mistakes while defending certain court choices. Acosta's legal team noted in the hearing that, with today's knowledge, the way the original prosecution was handled would have been different. But he also insisted that some outcomes the deal produced were necessary. Epstein went to jail, became a registered sex offender, and victims received restitution. He argued that without the deal, those outcomes might never have happened. Why people are still outraged. Even after all these years, many feel this deal was morally and legally inadequate. Here's why the criticism persists: scale of abuse versus scope of conviction. Many victims had already come forward, some gave sworn statements, but the plea deal narrowed what was prosecuted. Work release while accused. Epstein was allowed regular, long daily absences from jail under work release, which critics say offered him opportunity to continue abusive behavior. Protection for co-conspirators. The non-prosecution agreement included immunity for potential co-conspirators who might have participated in his network. That's huge because it blocks future investigation of people who may have enabled Epstein's abuses. Transparency concerns. Victims complained that they weren't properly informed, some documents were sealed. Certain evidence may not have been preserved or shared in a way that could help strengthen federal prosecutions. Where the legal and political lines are drawn now. What's happening today isn't just about revisiting past mistakes. The hearing is part of larger investigations and legal fights. Congress is trying to force full public access to the transcript of Acosta's testimony and related documents, including unredacted files from the Department of Justice, DOJ, and the Epstein estate. Lawmakers on both sides are asking, who made key decisions? When did people in the chain, FBI, DOJ, states' attorneys' offices, know what and why did they act or fail to act as they did? The FBI Director Kash Patel earlier described the original 2006 to 2008 probe as having systemic failures, calling Acosta's handling an original sin in the broader Epstein saga. what's still unclear, and what to watch. Even with the 6-hour interview, many questions remain unanswered. Exact content of victim and witness statements. How many minors had given detailed sworn statements by the time Acosta made the deal? What did those statements contain? Did they implicate co-conspirators or foreign abuse? We don't yet have a full public accounting. Internal communications, emails, memos, meeting notes, who argued for or against proceeding to federal charges, who objected. Especially important, what did prosecutors or supervisors think privately versus what they said publicly? Role of local prosecutors and authorities. Acosta blamed local authorities for work release permission. We still need clarity on who made those decisions and when. What role powerful figures might have played. Trump's name, Maxwell, others have been mentioned. Acosta said he didn't see Trump's name in his documents, but if other files do mention high-profile people, when did he or others see them? Transcripts and document release. Will the transcript of Acosta's deposition be released in full? Will unredacted documents from DOJ and Epstein's estate be made public? How long will that take? The broader significance, justice, accountability, and lessons. This is not just a political scandal, it's a test of how institutions handle allegations of sexual abuse, powerful people, and prosecutorial discretion. A few takeaways. Victims deserve to be heard and informed. The controversy underscores how much procedural fairness matters. Not just the outcome, but how the process treats victims. Transparency, involvement, acknowledgement. Prosecutorial decisions have long shadows. Choices made 15, 20 years ago still affect survivors, ongoing investigations, public trust, decisions to settle, negotiate immunity, avoid trial. Those are not just legal technicalities. Power and privilege complicate justice. Epstein had immense wealth, connections, legal muscle. Prosecutors say that defense teams made strong arguments, complicated evidence, novel legal challenges, but critics say those arguments were over-relied upon, perhaps to Epstein's benefit. What to look for next? Here are what I'm keeping an eye on. Release of the full transcript of Acosta's testimony. Once it's public, we'll be able to see exactly how congressmen pushed, how Acosta responded, what he avoided. Additional documents from DOJ and Epstein estate, especially those which have been sealed or redacted. Whether there will be legal consequences for prosecutors who made the decisions, or whether legislative reforms are proposed to prevent similar plea deals in sex abuse cases. Reactions from survivors and their legal teams once they review what's released. Their perspective matters deeply, not just as commentators but as people directly impacted. The political fallout, how this reflects on broader questions of accountability for officials under Trump and before, and whether this affects public faith in prosecutorial and justice systems. SEO keywords to watch. When you share or search this story, these phrases help cut through the noise. Alex Acosta Epstein hearing. 2008 non-prosecution agreement Epstein. Epstein plea deal testimony 2025. Jeffrey Epstein victims work release. Acosta Oversight Committee transcript. Epstein co-conspirator immunity. Prosecutorial accountability sexual abuse cases. Final thoughts. What Acosta's testimony shows is this. Even after years of scrutiny, many people still believe the 2008 deal was unjust. Acosta says he acted within what the law and evidence permitted. The critics say he should have done more, especially given the scale of the allegations and the number of victims already known. Justice isn't always about doing everything perfectly. It's about being honest, transparent, and willing to own mistakes. Right now the question is, will the institutions follow through so that survivors get more clarity, not just speeches? Will Congress push for transparency and perhaps changes so nothing like this is repeated? Time will tell.